We are on the cusp of sovereign space launch here in Canada, and in the next few minutes, I'm going to take a look at how Launch Canada helped to build and drive a grassroots movement that helped bring us to this point and became a primary source of talent for all of the components of this emerging ecosystem, and how we aim to build on this to serve as a force multiplier to help this push for sovereign space launch to succeed. So in order to do big things, you've got to start from where you are with what you have. And historically in Canada, we have not had a launch industry, outside of a couple notable exceptions like Cesaroni Technologies and Magellan. But what we did have was many of the foundations. We've got a lot of the pieces of the supply chain. We've got world-leading manufacturing capabilities, cutting-edge R&D capabilities, lots of engineering organizations. And then starting about 15 years ago, something changed. It didn't start with government, it didn't start with industry, it started with individual experimenters, tinkerers, and students. Students across the country started building rockets, not because anybody told them to, but because they were inspired. They were inspired by what they saw taking place internationally at companies like SpaceX, and were no longer satisfied with being told that we can't do that here in Canada. For my part, I was one of those silly, inspired enthusiasts who was always drawn to the technology and started developing my own liquid rocket engines earlier than most in the late 90s. And then I ended up with a couple aerospace engineering degrees. And after years of feeling like a bit of a cry in the wilderness as a Canadian rocket advocate, I found myself mentoring a growing number of these new student teams and doing what I could to teach them how to be safe and successful. The initial catalyst for these teams getting started was actually an American rocket competition. And from the beginning, the Canadians regularly dominated at it while developing technologies that many companies would be hard-pressed to match, all while creating pathways into this industry for huge segments of the country where that had never been an option before. I founded Launch Canada back in 2018 after several years of being immersed in this growing movement and seeing the disconnect that we were producing talent that was quite literally the envy of the world, yet at home in Canada, nobody was really paying attention or doing anything to support it. The foundation of a new industry was being created under the radar, so we started Launch Canada to unite it, support it, make it visible to Canadians, and help it to become what we knew it could become. So we are now in the 5th year of our signature event, our Launch Canada competition, and this is really primarily a technology development sandbox and training ground for students. We have about 60 projects this year from right across the country, doing everything from launching rockets to close to 100,000 feet and supersonic speeds, to firing large liquid propellant rocket engines and demonstrating the full spectrum of launch-related technology. We create the opportunity for them to try new things, learn, possibly fail, and gain the deep knowledge that can only come when you do that. We also make public outreach a major component of everything we do. We want Canadians to understand that this is an industry that is real and accessible to them, and so we partner with the City of Timmins, the Matagami First Nation, and organizations across the country to try to make rocketry real for more Canadians. We also have what we call our special projects that aim to address some of the fundamental challenges of rocket technology development by creating major collaborative projects that bring together students with industry professionals and the supply chain writ large to take on real-world aerospace engineering technology development projects and build new capabilities for Canada at about 1/10 what it normally costs to do this. So this is just a quick look at what our 2025 rocket competition looked like, just to give everybody a little idea. So that was our largest competition ever. We launched 100 rockets over the course of the event, and the competition regularly plays host to major Canadian firsts. We hosted the first civilian liquid rocket ever flown in Canada. Then we hosted a larger one the next year. We've hosted the largest student-built rocket engine ever fired in the world. And every year we continue to raise the bar, and we see our students doing things that students do not normally do. To give an idea of our special projects, this was actually a rocket engine testing boot camp that we held back in 2021 using my own rocket engine test trailer to give the students some deep insight into what goes into real-world rocket engine development and testing. So that was actually our very first test firing attempt as well. So it was fun kind of showing the students that you can actually be successful at this if you go about it the right way. And we showed them a few of what the ingredients of that look like. And as you can see, everyone was pretty excited. So really the common thread through everything that we do is creating opportunities for Canadians to push the technological envelope across the full spectrum of launch-related technologies and capabilities, and we actively act to bridge the gap between what they learn in school and what the industry actually requires to be successful. So why is this grassroots approach so important? It really cuts to the heart of one of the most fundamental realities of rocket development. Everyone knows the famous quote from legendary NASA flight director Gene Kranz during the Apollo 13 mission: "Failure is not an option." Unfortunately, in reality, not only is failure an option, it's usually the default option. There are many paths to developing launch vehicles, and most of them do not lead to success. I don't say this to be pessimistic. I say this because it is objectively true. What you see here is what rocket development looks like. And these are just a very small sampling of what real pathways to rocket development have historically looked like. They include everything from Vanguard, Atlas, and Thor to more recent rockets like Falcon 9 and Cygnus. There are no credible mechanisms for developing rockets that don't involve some degree of this. And this is one of the really fundamental challenges. To be successful developing rockets, things like this will happen, but you need to minimize it because these are usually very costly ways of learning. But the industry in the United States is underpinned by more than 6 decades of deep knowledge that was hard-won through failures like this. And to do this in Canada, we are going to be going through the same exercise, but we're going to need to do this at an accelerated pace, and we're going to need to try to get there with a minimum of failures as far as we can. So it's also important to remember that what people tend to focus on primarily, the rockets, the spaceports, that's only the tip of the iceberg. And what Canadians need to focus on if we want to get there is not just the tip, but everything that's below the surface. All of the critical capabilities that actually underpin a functioning launch industry. And central to all of that is talent. And so Launch Canada's primary focus is on developing that talent, but we tend to broaden our perspective and work hard to address all of the different unseen aspects below the waterline that are ultimately necessary in order to achieve a stable launch capability. We've been working on developing test infrastructure. We have our technology development projects that develop technology and build out supply chain, and we are actively involved in the regulatory process and all of these peripherally related elements as well. So it's a holistic approach to creating a sustainable industry. As a next step, we are actively looking at building off of what we've already created. What's been missing is a permanent place to bring all of these things together and build out the kind of infrastructure that can create real value for the industry to support the most advanced ground and flight testing. So we're working now to evolve our current proven launch site into a genuine shared hub for training and collaboration, not just for Launch Canada, but for the entire ecosystem. We've been building towards this for years. Now we want to start building out the infrastructure that can help the entire industry to prove technologies and retire risk at the lowest possible cost, all while building the talent that the industry needs to succeed such that we see fewer exploding rockets like what we saw on slide 10. So Launch Canada's mission has always been to harness and support Canada's grassroots rocketry movement and draw it together with the ecosystem writ large to build the practical skills required to build this new industry. The inspiration is there, and we empower our students to explore it, run with it, experience it, maybe fail, and if they fail, to learn from it. And this has been allowing students to build real-world engineering skills that are almost unheard of among new grads. It's been cultivating a generation of young engineers who understand that they have it within themselves to take on and solve the hardest problems, and it's been laying the foundation for this whole new emerging industry. This didn't start with policy, it didn't start with industry, it started from the bottom up. We helped build that movement. Now we're focused on building what it needs to succeed, the talent, the technology, the supply chain, the infrastructure, the things that actually make a launch industry possible. Thank you very much.